What is up, good people of the world? Okay, so today we're going to be talking about the lament bass progression, which is a really, really beautiful and very simple idea that can lend a lot of different harmonic possibilities on top. And you can do it in major and minor, you can do it with different scale degrees. The basic idea, you've probably heard this progression before, like think of like, I don't know, chim chimney, chim chimney, chim chim, hooray, if you've ever heard that before. The original, most popular version of the progression, right, is really just sort of like we start on A minor, you move the root down chromatically, you can get an augmented chord or just dominant, right, and then the 3 chord or minor 5, some sort of half diminished usually. It could also be like, D dominant 7 over a D sharp, and then D minor over F or F major, A minor over E, and then, the 7 diminished chord of 5, which takes you back to 1. That's kind of the original version of the progression. And there are ways of messing with that. So like, you could do something like that, voicing wise. And here are some examples of just some scales that you can use on top of that basic progression that make it sound a little bit more exotic, kind of like what I was just doing. So if I go from A minor to augmented, right? You could put augmented scale on top of that, but you could also just put A melodic minor, which is a beautiful scale. Once we go to here, you can always use, this is kind of a weird thing to do, but you can always use harmonic minor. Well, basically, here's a trick. Okay, I'll put it this way. If you go to a major chord, and then you pretend like you're on the 6th chord of a minor scale, and make that scale harmonic minor. So, if I'm on C major is the 6th chord of what minor scale? E minor, right? And so harmonic E minor would be, right? So you get this interesting scale. Right? It gives you a kind of little leading tone on the 3rd scale degree. So that's fun to do in this progression. Right? Right? And I'm using E major on top of D dominant 7, which is sort of like, Lydian flat 7. It's like Mixolydian and Lydian mixed together, which is another mode of melodic minor. It's the 4th mode of A melodic minor in this case. F Lydian, or we can put that G sharp in there. And another interesting thing is too, you can also use melodic minor. So I can use A melodic minor on F, which kind of works because it gives us this nice thing that leads to the 3rd, even though it's like an F sharp on top of F, which is kind of strange, right? Which is a really fun sound. Anyway, but what I really wanted to show you today, well, I'll go over the normal major lament bass progression, and then I want to show you my kind of variation, and that's what I really want to show you. But the major one is also really beautiful. It's like, right? So it's just sort of like 1 with a major 7th in the bass, which gives us this nice cloudy kind of sadness. And it sort of turns into a dominant 7 that can lead, right, to some sort of like 4 in first inversion, which turns to minor 4, right? You guys know that sound. But now we're going to C major over G. And instead of resolving that to 5, like, you would classically, 5 of 5 or half diminished of 5. And again, instead of resolving that leading tone up, you slip it down chromatically, right? And you can always do that, right? Mozart liked to do those kinds of things. He would take tritones, which is very dissonant, right? But you combine it with a 5th sequence. can create really interesting sequences. So you kind of get the crazy, well, you get the smooth voice leading of the chromaticism, but there's a lot of dissonance, but it's sort of like chromaticism that is supported by functionality underneath. Anyway, so yeah. But anyway, my variation of the Lament progression, I'm sure someone else has done this before, but I think it's fun. So if we take, we're going to start on A minor, and we're just going to use the same bass line of this descending chromatic sequence, but we're going to put a different progression on top of it. So A minor, G sharp minor, right? You could also think of this as like E major, Lydian, or whatever. And I really like to toy with this E and the F. I think I talked about this in my last video, right? I can't remember if I did or not, but the basic idea is you take two notes, and in a certain context, they both belong to the same scale. In another context, they make a change to the scale, and so it kind of makes it sound wider than it actually is. For example, if I play this on A minor, it doesn't sound that emotionally different because they both can belong to just sort of like A minor / F Lydian. But if I go to the G sharp minor, then it's sort of like, you know, flat 6, natural 6. It's like we're changing back and forth between Dorian and Aeolian / Phrygian, which makes it sound a little bit more wobbly, right? So, and then we keep on going, and now we get a G minor chord with sort of Dorian, but now it's a part of the scale. And here's the really fun part. Once we go to this chord, it's sort of like D major with a little add to, you know, or a ninth in first inversion. Right? You can use the F if you want to be really edgy, but you could also use F natural. Right? And then we're kind of continuing the progression, sequencing it. Just how G minor is sort of like the minor 4 of D major. F minor is sort of like the minor 4 of C major. And from here, you could do that if you wanted to be very classical. Or that's a fun thing that I've been doing recently, which is playing a minor 7. Just playing chords with the dominant in the bass. And it sounds like a dominant. Right. Or, right. Or, that's like 2 half diminished over 5. But the point is just having 5. You can really put anything on top of it. But anyway, so maybe we'll go. Go to sort of G dominant 7, and that takes you more naturally up to A minor, no pun intended. I really like to mess with this note as a common tone. I know, I'm focusing on certain tones, the tones that I like the sound of. Messing with it. Step. interesting. Okay, so went to A minor down to here, right? Right, I could just make it sort of like Phrygian, but if I made it Lydian, then this Lydian of E Lydian is also a common tone that takes us to the third of G minor, right? So, right, A natural, change of scale, right? That's fun. So that's, yeah, so that's kind of like using the augmented chord as a substitution for, so think of it this way. I'll put it in A minor to make it easy. So you know how sometimes we use G sharp or, you know, E, doesn't matter how you spell it, it's, you know, symmetrical. E augmented can be a substitute for E dominant 7. You know, you can resolve it with normal major chord or just leave it. Right, has a melodramatic kind of sound. We can also use this as a substitution instead of for E major, which is dominant of A minor. We can use it as a substitution for F minor, which takes us to C major. It's like the modal mixture thing, right? So I can go, which is a very nice kind of thing. And that was what I was doing earlier. G minor, F sharp augmented. We can move both of those together. So again, mixing all that stuff together. Anyway, so that's just to give you an example of like the weirdest stuff that you can do on top of it. But anyway, that's just hopefully to give you one example of experimenting with the Lament bass. It sounds really pleasing to have that chromatic motion in the bass, and there are an infinite number of ways that you can you know, create harmonic progressions that work on top of that. So that's the biggest thing I would encourage you to do. Feel free to steal or play with any of these progressions, but also come up with your own. Just take a chromatic bass movement that's moving down, and you can experiment with moving up as well, and see if you can come up with really beautiful progressions. I'm sure that you can. Anyway, I hope that was helpful or enjoyable. If nothing else, I will see you in the next video.